Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Rich Berliner from 5th Gen Media and Connected Real Estate. We're here for our panel at 2 o'clock on what are the trends for building owners in Proptech. And I'm really happy to have a very esteemed panel. We have Ken DiScipio from Tavistock Realty, Sam Ramadori from Brainbox AI, Amit Sarin from View, and Nick Austin from Comfy. So thank you all for being here, panelists. I appreciate it very much. Ken, I want to start out with you, if you wouldn't mind. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we kick in. I apologize. First of all, I want to encourage everybody that's listening in today to visit our exhibits and the chat rooms. So after this panel is over, please feel free to go in and to visit the exhibits and chat rooms. We've got a great assortment of exhibitors at this event and a ton of great sponsors, so please visit their booths. So without further ado, Ken, I wanted to talk about the trends that you and I have been discussing along the way. I look to you as my go-to guy in terms of what's going on in the marketplace in terms of new technologies, interesting things, disinfecting things, return to work sort of technologies. So talk us through what you're seeing. I know you're cooped up in the beautiful South Lake Tahoe right now, but talk us through what's going on from you, what you're seeing and hearing in the marketplace.
Sure. So you know, last couple of years, what we've seen is a greater expansion of mobility being a focus, really for occupiers, and we play a role as both an occupier with our portfolio of companies that Tavistock Group is involved in, but then also as a developer in building buildings of the future that allow us to be, you know, the occupiers to be more efficient and helps with recruiting and retention of employees. So going in, we're seeing a higher level of technology in terms of the infrastructure. And I think, you know, over the last couple of months, and even since we had our last webinar, what we're seeing is that there's a greater emphasis now on the building, the infrastructure of the buildings. And it's helping us prove out that some of the things we did, we were on the right track, right? It's valid that we started, you know, putting in a higher degree of fiber, and you're going to hear from Amit at View and how View Glass is changing the way we provide infrastructure to the occupiers. But then also we're seeing a greater emphasis on, it's obvious that you're seeing everyone's focusing on how do we get back into the buildings and how do we use technology. And so the advantage that I think we have is we're seeing a lot of these companies coming to us to try these things out and say, you know, it's not just about putting stickers that direct you on the floor. It's not about taking your temperature or using an app to answer some questions. What we're seeing is really robust products that were used for other things now coming into play. And I'll talk about some of those things in more length when you want me to.
Got it. So anything, you know, you and I have discussed a bunch of different things, you know, UV disinfecting. Can you talk us through some of the highest things that you're theing that you think would be interesting for you to share at this point in time in terms of technology?
There's a couple of really neat things we're seeing, and you mentioned the UV technology, and that was something where there's one company in particular, a company called Violet Defense, and we started experimenting with Violet Defense in both homes because we're building a city. It's a 17 square mile city that we're building called Lake Nona, and we started experimenting with Violet Defense years ago when it became, how do we sterilize bathrooms and kitchens, and then using ceiling tiles to sterilize the office space. And initially we were doing it as a solution to well building standards that came into play. Delos really kind of launched it, and now others are following well building standards. But it was a solution to lower the cost of sterilizing common areas. And now what's happened is now UV is proving to be one of the saviors to get us back into the office and have clean work environments. And so that, you know, that's something that's really taken off, and that's a product that there's multiple companies doing it. I'd say the other one, which is something really exciting, and there's a company we know as Jawbone Health. Jawbone Health, that makes a wearable that's become a health certificate to get us back into space, right? It could be getting us back into school. And what it is, it has a 92% accuracy rate that based on your biometrics, I don't know if anyone who wears an Apple Watch sees the green light. Well, Jawbone was instrumental in that technology and giving that to Apple. But now they've got a green and blue light, which has a 92% accuracy to say, hey, you're registering as a yellow, go get a COVID viral test because you have all the symptoms. And so we're seeing several countries and many companies now, and you're going to hear more about Jawbone Health. They're going through a name change over the next week or two, and they're finishing up their trials with Cleveland Clinic and Harvard and several other organizations. But it really is an accurate parameter of something you wear 24/7. It learns your biometrics and then can actually guide you. So that's something really exciting because, look, we're all trying to get back into the workplace. And this heavy demand on the infrastructure in the buildings, these are all things that tie into getting us back there. But it's important to have this infrastructure in the buildings. And, I View is another one that I think is really exciting. And I'm not gonna spoil Amit's thunder here, but View is doing some really incredible things with, sensors that are tracking air quality and enhancing your signals throughout the facilities. But
gotcha. So we're going to come to Amit in a little bit, but I'd like to start with Nick first and talk about what Comfy is doing. Nick, so you are working on connecting people back to their offices safely. Talk us through what Comfy is doing and what its role in this ecosystem of the office is.
Yeah, sounds good, Rich. And so I'll just give a little bit of background on Comfy as a company. About 2.5 years ago, we became a part of Siemens Smart Infrastructure. And with that, our main product offering to our clients for the past few years has been about the employee on one side, having an app and a platform to engage with to make their actual workplace experience when they come into the office or even when they start their day, to have the right communication from a Fortune 500 enterprise that they need to go book a desk, book a room, know what group they're in. So when it comes to return to work, we're hearing a lot from our clients on they need a way to get their people back into the office, not just from an infrastructure standpoint of having, Ken, you were talking about the stickers on the ground or on the chairs saying which ones are open or not. Well, we're trying to make that a little bit more advanced and having a digital experience to show a lot of that. So a big one is physical distancing. So when we talk about desks being open or closed and actively being able to have someone choose that space wherever they need to in an agile office, these are the types of things that we're helping our clients with. And I think, this panel, it was titled Smart Buildings, but I think our clients are thinking about smart portfolios. And that's really where we're having an impact. So it's both on that employee side with the app, but also with the insights that they can gain from having a consistent feedback loop from their employees. And that's going to matter as these organizations are bringing people back. It's, first we're bringing back 10% and then 25 and then 50. And each one of those phases is going to be a different experience that they're having to deliver and a different set of communications at a site-by-site basis.
Interesting. So I guess the question is, how does this fit together with all the other things that people are looking at in terms of Proptech devices and software? Is what you're doing sort of a tenant amenity platform, or is it very different than that? And how does the connectivity piece fit in here, Nick, in terms of you've got to have great connectivity to make this work. Without, having something to connect it to, the Comfy app isn't going to work. So talk us through that piece of it.
Sure. Yeah. So Comfy's acting as the hub for many of the workplace technologies that organizations are investing in. So we, for many years, have been creating a partner network and ecosystem where we can take in an IoT sensor, let's say Enlighted or a Verge Sense, and get occupancy information from that, so that we can enable a use case like, stepping up to a desk and having the app just show that. But then it's also about having that data compared with the calendar system, or the HVAC system or the lighting system. All of these things, which are, when you're talking about an existing portfolio, let's say 5% is new build or renovations. We need to be able to cover the investments that people have already made in buildings and make that useful. And then also be what future-proofs them going forward, to be able to add on things and also be a consultative partner in that process. When it comes to connectivity, I was thinking about this, and we're a cloud platform, SaaS. So for the most part, we are connecting through all of these different technologies through APIs. But I think that I was thinking about lag time. And if you're a user in a building and you need to walk up and have that desk notice that you're there, or that you've walked away now to go get a coffee and it's going to go from green or gray to yellow on the actual floor map that you're looking at, you need to have that IoT sensor be able to talk to the cloud and to then our cloud as quickly as possible to really have the experience be awesome. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Gotcha. So yeah, I guess my question was more that to reach the cloud, your service has got to talk through something, Wi-Fi, cellular, some kind of connection to it. And that seems like a very important thing. Again, we've talked a lot in our past about all this Proptech investment is great, but if you don't have a way to connect it to the cloud or connect it to the building systems, you're kind of SOL on that score. Is that part of what are there challenges to that for you in buildings where there isn't good coverage, I guess?
To be totally honest, I from a technical standpoint, I don't run into this often with our clients. It takes a Wi-Fi signal, but I think that it is going to get better and better as we get different technologies and the infrastructure for these buildings. So I can say it's not going to hurt. And that's why I was mentioning lag time, because it's really where I think we would see a benefit to having things be faster, quicker, better, and more reliable.
So using 5G or Wi-Fi 6 or other technologies would help.
I think so.
Gotcha. Good.
I'd have to ask my CTO. I'd bring him online to answer that question.
Gotcha. Makes good sense. So Sam, let's talk about Brainbox AI and what you guys are doing. The opportunity for us, one of the things we discussed on our first panel of the day was that even though buildings were somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 or 20% occupied, that the power usage was somewhere around 60 or 65 or even higher. And what that led everyone to believe was that there was a tremendous amount of IT draw from all the servers and all the racks and all those things. And then in this particular case, you are in a position to help that building save money while those resources aren't being used. So can you talk us through what Brainbox is doing and how you can help real estate folks?
Sure. Thanks, Rich. I look at the core. We try to simplify what it is we deliver to a building, because on the back end it's quite complex. But in essence, we've developed an artificial intelligence layer that resides on top of the existing HVAC control system, BMS, of the building.
Sam, could you just speak up a bit? I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sure. Is that still a problem, or is that better?
That's good. Just you need to lean in.
Perfect. So we've developed an artificial intelligence layer on top of the BMS of the building, controlling the HVAC system, and very much bringing the full power of AI. So the AI is thrown around a lot as a concept, but what we've really developed is a truly autonomous artificial intelligence, and we equate it to what AI is doing in a self-driving car. That's what we bring to a building. And once you do that, people talk about the step of opening up the door to big data. We walk through that door and we then open up the next door, which is autonomous control. And once you have something like that in place, it really opens up the opportunity in terms of what you can do to improve a building. So at the core of our technology, pre-COVID, we were looking at installing artificial intelligence, autonomous control of the HVAC system. And we all know HVAC is by far the biggest single energy consuming piece in the building, is to really deliver meaningful savings in a way that's scalable and very affordable. But the reality is what we're doing is creating an AI solution that's able to learn each building, because one of the challenges is huge built environment, but every building is unique, like a person. And so if you have to put people behind learning how that building operates, you'll be there forever and you'll never scale. So we use AI for its self-learning capability, and then turn it on its head once it's learned how a building runs. And we basically give it the ability to predict the future 4 or 5, 6 hours out. We then turn it around and ask the AI, these are our goals. What are the best settings in the system to get there? And our core goals are energy savings and comfort. But now it comes COVID. And as we learn more and more about how it's spreading and the predominant forms of spreading, it's becoming more and more clear that the airborne transmission is a key component of that. So ASHRAE, the industry standard for heating and ventilation industry association, and CDC have come together with a number of protocols or operating metrics that will, call it, reduce the amount of time that airborne pathogens are alive in the air. Well, that's a good thing to do, but to then go implement it in a whole portfolio of buildings and doing it manually makes it both very difficult. And I mean, for sure, it's going to increase your energy costs in a building, implementing those changes, but it's also very problematic because you can imagine it's asking you to increase the air changes in the building and bring in more fresh air from the outside. Well, that's fine on a day that's 74 degrees and regular humidity, but on the day that it's 105 and really high humidity, you start pulling in the same amount of air on that day, and you're really going to put your system under strain and doubt that you'll be able to meet the comfort objectives of the HVAC system. So one of the cores of our AI is that we could tell it to save energy as much as we can tell it to optimize versus these new metrics. And you could do that across our portfolio, kind of like in a single flip, switch flip. And I guess that's the kind of door that this autonomous AI is opening in terms of opportunity.
So what kind of savings are you seeing from the installations that you're doing? Can you quantify that for us, please?
Sure. We're typically seeing, we're typically ranging between, we're cutting the total energy spend of a building by up to 25%. In cases we've hit up to 30, but we're typically seeing 20 to 25% reduction in the total energy spend of the building. So mind you, we're only touching the HVAC system. So to get there, we're actually optimizing the HVAC system by, upwards of, 40, 50, 60%. So it is a very material step change in performance. And people really have the question mark when we're putting these numbers out there. I mean, the reality is when you understand that today's system is purely reactive, right? It's like driving a car and someone's painted over your windshield. The HVAC system has no clue what's coming in 5 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. So it's purely reactive. We give it the ability, we give it 99% accuracy predictions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours into the future. And now suddenly it can optimize knowing what's coming. Kind of simple comparison.
Yeah, but so just so I get it right, is it sophisticated enough to say, hey, it's summertime and the building typically has a drop off in the number of people in the building on summer Fridays after 1 o'clock. So therefore, I'm going to turn everything down after 1 o'clock on Fridays during the summer because I know that there are going to be fewer and fewer people in the building and I can reduce. Is that an accurate sort of picture of it, or am I oversimplifying?
I mean, it does that, and it does that, 1,000 times over with many other variables. I mean, the more easier one to understand, your building, whichever building you're in, starts in the morning, changes by season, but it starts in the morning, same time every day, whether that day is going to be 100 degrees in full sun or rainy and 72. Whereas the AI will know, well, look, that's what I faced today. So I don't need to start my air conditioning at 6:30 in the morning. I can wait till 7:12, and I can stagger various components of that startup so that I'm not creating a power peak. But AI is AI, right? Big data, more data that you give it, the more effective it is. So it'll be optimizing down to the nth kind of input that you can give it, including occupancy that you just mentioned.
Gotcha. Okay, so now we get to the belle of the ball here, Amit, and talking about View Glass and what you guys are doing, because I think this is a pretty exciting piece of the puzzle. We've got, an assortment of different technologies and companies that are represented on the panel, and each one has their own methodology of going about helping the landlord reduce cost and make it more comfortable for tenants. Amit, talk us through what View Glass is doing and how you are fitting into that process.
Yeah, thanks, Rich, and thanks to all the previous panelists. I think.
By the way, I want to thank you and View. You guys are the sponsor of this panel, and I do want to give you a shout out for that. We appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. So View is a technology company that is focused on creating the best spaces for people inside of them. And so for the last 12 years, we've been ultra focused on health and wellness, as well as sustainability, really focused on people looking inside of the building out. And so we are a company that provides an infrastructure and backbone, both in terms of technology, connectivity, sensor stack, and also the actual window or IGUs, the glass panels that make up the skin of the building to make it a digital skin. And so there's a lot of things you can accomplish when you have that kind of infrastructure in your building. So primarily, the first thing we enabled was an IGU, a window that tints automatically. So this touches a little bit on kind of utilizing AI and energy efficiency, but more than that, really letting as much daylight in as possible, getting rid of shades and blinds, and then using AI to optimize the space depending on whoever is sitting behind the glass, what direction they're sitting, what the orientation of the building is, and then automatically tinting, letting daylight in. We have some independent research that shows large increases in productivity, cognitive function, and even increase in sleep due to both reduction in kind of eye strain, but also circadian rhythm being enhanced by getting the proper amount of daylight at the right times throughout the day. And so that was kind of the first step. Since then, we've built in a number of sensors, a sensor stack, and also kind of upped our ability to optimize against having an IP address in each window. And so given that, we're seeing the ability to customize spaces for occupants, either at an individual level or company level, floor plate level, as well as some benefits that are directly helping with COVID. So on reentry, everyone's kind of focused on health and wellness, and there's the immediate need. How do we get back to work? How do we kind of normalize given what's going on with the virus? But then there's the longer term. How do we shift so that our spaces are actually putting people first, and really prioritizing occupants?
Gotcha. So one of the interesting things that I talked about, and the CEO of View was on an earlier panel today, is all the things that you guys are potentially stuffing in the mullions around the windows themselves. And so there's a lot of things in the currently, in the future, and in the very distant future that I think are really interesting that people would want to know about. So what are you doing today, and what are you kind of looking towards to the future in terms of what you could put in the edges of that window?
Yeah, great question, Rich. So we have a sensor stack that, and this is today, so the glass plus the sensor stack and the AI behind it, the software behind it that drives it, that has air quality sensors, understands how people are moving in the space, can optimize for, if I'm thinking about COVID, can do anything from kind of, are we distancing correctly? Are the proper cleaning products being used? Are surfaces actually clean? To wayfinding and touchless entry, where the glass itself is your interface and it can do some temperature sensing and then actually direct you to where you need to go in a way where you don't come in contact or come within 6 feet of people, other people in the space. So, you know, that stack is in there. The other piece about it is we're using the mullion and then some other drops throughout. So this is with fiber backbone and then high-speed coax running throughout the space. You can integrate with other technologies, but you're also getting, you know, today you have a T-stat in 1 or 2 locations on a floor plate. You're getting 1 or 2 discrete data points, and you're not understanding what's happening throughout the floor plate. We built our system so that you get a multitude of data points, and you actually can control to keep a constant thermal as well as safe space throughout the entire floor plate. And this is really optimizing for everybody in the space and enhancing everybody's comfort, as opposed to, you know, today, whoever's close to the thermostat or close to your CO2 sensor, you might be getting their read, but you're not understanding the full space.
Gotcha. So one of the things that's been discussed, and not sure whether this is in deep cover or this is out in the open, but Rahul showed a slide of a radio that was integrated into the mullion. And he talked about the fact that what View really does is build a network that connects all these windows, and also the potential for the future to have antennas in the mullions so that there is instant coverage in that building. Can you talk us through that aspect of it, please?
Yeah, two things I've been a little silent on. Both are you know, we have a partner who's benefiting from both today. So both are in action, though we haven't fully commercialized. One is what you speak to, which is we have the ability for 5G and other network, other radios, right, other frequencies to run through our glass. So we're putting actual radios either in the glass or in the mullion. So you're 5G capable. You're also, you know, LTE or CBRS private networks. A lot of the tech companies are looking at that through our product and through our infrastructure. And then the other big one here is we have a display in the glass, so you can actually kind of interact with the glass. It goes clear, or you can interact with it like you would your cell phone, and all of those features built directly in. So those are kind of the stuff that we're baiting with select folks right now, and we'll be going out into the market fully shortly with that technology.
Got it. So Ken, back to you. You and I have discussed and been, you know, worked on panels and things in the past on what you're doing in the communication space. And again, you know, I'm going to try to push this discussion of the new technologies and how connectivity and communications fits together with that. But, you know, you've talked about what you're doing in Lake Nona in terms of 5G testing, in terms of autonomous vehicles, in terms of gathering medical data with your the approval of your residents. Talk us through that from a communications and a you know, sort of high level as to where you see the future of all this going.
Well, you know, so I'm going to back up a little bit. You know, after hearing, you know, Sam and Nick and Amit, you know, all these products, you know, it's exciting because everything they're talking about, I was going to say, we don't build anything, like we don't manufacture anything, but we build cities. And so all of these products are there to enhance the experience, right? So when we look at Lake Nona and we look at the different components of, you've got this robust residential component, you've got visitors, and then you have the commercial tenants. And everything we sort of look at is, you know, how do you enhance that experience, right? And so for the commercial tenants, it goes back to increasing productivity. You know, it could be something as easy as View letting more light in, enhancing productivity. It could be measuring sleep, like you started going down the path is, we gather data. 72% of our residents provide us with some level of data, whether it's medical records to exercise habits to wearable information, eating habits. And then you can go back and draw conclusions, right? We can say that if 68% of America does not get a proper night's sleep, well, what happens when they don't get a proper night's sleep? You lose an hour and a half of productivity before lunchtime the next day, right? So it goes back to, how do we pay for these things? And this is what I think is exciting. I think we're going through a fundamental shift that we're going to be building, and we are building better buildings, right? It's that decision up front to provide the infrastructure from the windows. You know, we focus on the windows out, right? Because I think the end users, the service providers, the architects do a great job at providing, you know, direction internally in the space and enhancing the productivity. But it starts with the infrastructure of the building. It starts with putting in view glass from day one, and then we can, you know, enhance that experience. And look, we've looked at where tenants spend their money, and then, you know, capital improvements and TIs. And what we have found is that by building a better infrastructure that enhances mobility and you know, all types of things that we can put into the space, we're actually helping the tenant, you know, improve those 4 platforms that I mentioned before. And so when we look at like Nona, it spills into the neighborhood as well, right? It spills into the residents and building the community and building a sense of you know, a culture outside the building as well. But I keep going back to, I think we need to build a better infrastructure that allows them for the mobility and the collection of data, right? Because that's where we're heading, right? Everything, you know, everything we do, whether it's in a parking garage, gathering data about security issues or parking or directing traffic, you know, we need that robust infrastructure.
Could I jump in, Rich, for just a second on this, Ken? I think that's a great point. And so one of the things that, you know, we went from a smart window to building this broader suite of sensors and functionalities, partly because what we saw is we're the first wire in a building, and the value to spec developers, but also build the suits when folks are looking at what space should they take or what kind of building do they want, of having it all integrated such that everything is talking to each other and you're taking that data and then analyzing it seamlessly together and then driving action through the building, right? So if it's your HVAC system, or if it's your lighting, or if it's wayfinding, whatever the end outcome you need, they're all talking to each other and you're optimizing really for the occupant experience. That's then a system where the building is truly smart, as opposed to 7 different components trying to figure out what the other is doing. And to Sam, you know, to what Sam's doing, AI can get built so that it can start doing that talking and start taking the billions of data points and figuring out what the right push and pull is to get to the right outcome. And our real work is, how do we build an infrastructure so all of that is readily available? We also have our own AI so that that can drive towards actions specifically to help people in the building. One other thing I wanted to touch on related to this, because as you're collecting billions of data points, you know, that's a lot of compute necessary. And I think Nick made a good point around what happens with lag, right? So one other thing that we've started doing, we always had a chipset or a controller within our product. And now we've started enhancing how we're building the compute power. And we're actually getting to a point where edge compute is a possibility. So we built it, again, not commercialized today, will be shortly, so that your building actually has the ability to collect the data, process it on site, and then push commands immediately. So that lag to the cloud that Nick spoke about and back down isn't as much an issue. You know, everyone gets excited when they see our display. Hey, if I could advertise with that, someone's walking by or someone's walking in the space, and in an airport or in a, you know, a lobby of a hotel or something, it says, you know, have you bought your X? Because it knows who you are, and then it pushes a message to you. Beyond if you think that's a good idea or not, and if you want that in your space, there's an actual technical problem with that, which is by the time whatever that sensor is recognizes who you are, pushes that signal to the cloud, and then comes back down to feed you content, you've walked by it today, right? If you were to try to do that. So when you actually put compute in the skin of the building, I'm not saying that should be everywhere. I'm not proposing that's where we're going. I'm just saying you then have the capability of doing that. And in an office space, that can be 5 people gather in a conference room and are talking about something, and the building's actually then engaging with you real time, as opposed to it's all user driven. You can kind of get a good mix of both. So I think that's the future we're going to. I think, Ken, you hit on some great points around how do you get that data so you can really optimize.
So Nick, how does this work? How does this fit with you, what you're doing? In other words, is Amit right on this, or is this pie in the sky, or is this kind of something that's in your business plan?
No, I mean, I think Amit's spot on. And, you know, I followed Vue since I was at my last company 3 years ago, and I was walking through SFO waiting for it to be, have Vue Glass. So I love what they're doing. I think we're kind of revolving around the issue of AI and how we can get more and more data that drives a better experience for the people that are in these buildings. I think the one thing that, you know, maybe I didn't hear from Amit, well, a little bit with the touching on the glass, but I wanted to bring this up when Sam was talking. The question is, how are we engaging those employees and allowing them to give active feedback so that with all of this amazing data that we now have, we can pair that with their actual preferences. And I think that's really what, for years now, we've been doing, but are more and more, because we're getting more of these touch points throughout an employee's day. So they wake up, they book their desk. Now that we know that they've booked that desk, and day over day, they start booking a similar desk or a similar type of desk, or one that's near the view glass panels that are coming through the wall, or the right HVAC for them. Now we can start understanding utilization patterns and actually giving recommendations. So you can imagine like a notification on your phone at the start of the day, hey, would you like us to book this desk for you? We see that you're coming in for this meeting. And that's where you're actually talking about integration and just a higher level of what we can do throughout a day. So it's really exciting to me. The one thing I will tap back on, though, is this is all talking about a new renovation or new construction project. And the reality for most of our clients is that most of their portfolio isn't going to be at this level. They're going to want to go towards this. And the point is that we're trying to reach them wherever they are on that journey, so that when they want to make cool investments like Vue, like Brainbox, that we can help them integrate these technologies into what employees actually need. Gotcha.
So Sam, this sounds like a really brave new world that we're talking about, you know, as a metaphor here. What's on the drawing board for you, for your company, and for companies like yours in terms of, you know, the Proptech world is exploding. So when you go in to pitch somebody, they say, well, I've already put in this other Proptech thing that doesn't do what you do, but I don't know, will your AI situation work with this? Or do you wind up in a circumstance where, you know, everything isn't necessarily compatible, or is what you're doing totally compatible no matter what they've done before?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this picks up on what Amit and Nick were just describing. So as a company, we did like 2-3 years of stealth mode development, right? So locked up in the garage, figuring out the AI and all the safety features you need to put around an autonomous AI, just like we hope they're doing with the autonomous cars, right? So it was a lot of like inward development. But I'd say right now, you know, having done the core product and out in the market, we're now shifting to the exercise of plugging into and connecting with a lot of these other features going into the building. We are laser focused, right? We only manage the HVAC system. We don't touch anything else. So if Amit is installed in a building, the value of connecting our two systems would be incredible, right? Just being able to control one more element that is causing thermal load to increase or decrease and whatnot. So we're spending a lot of time now plugging into other people's, you know, what technology as they're going to a building. Comfy would be another one that relates to occupancy, right? Occupancy was a nice thought in most buildings, let's say office buildings, but it wasn't like people were running to put in dozens and hundreds of sensors to get the occupancy. Well, guess what? As technologies like Nix becomes more accessible And then, COVID's a horrible thing, but man, is occupancy now being considered a whole hell of a lot by office building owners. So suddenly, this kind of adoption, I think one just piles on top of the other, because we love plugging into other people's when the data is useful. Hey, like we don't do it just for fun, and neither would they. But when the data is useful and improves performance, that's probably a lot of what we're working on today. And then when people ask us, okay, what's next? For us, our next big path is we plug into one building and we deliver benefits to that one building and its owner. But as we expand our footprint and say in a city we're plugged into multiple tens or 50 buildings, suddenly we're able to manage those buildings as a whole, kind of like you manage an orchestra. And then you really start getting some interesting opportunities with regards to smart cities, with regards to grid optimization, demand response, all of that. Opportunities that kind of exist today, but are a bit difficult to scale. In our case, we'll be in 50 buildings in a city, like it or not, because we're delivering to each building good value. But once you manage them together, I think plugging in with the utilities provides a really interesting kind of roadmap for the future. And now the move towards renewables only means that our grids need to get smarter, right?
Gotcha.
To accept more renewables. So that's for us
Got it.
the next.
So Ken, I feel like I cut you off a little bit there. You weren't completely done with the point about Lake Nona and what you were doing there. Are there more kind of sexy technologies or, the connectivity of it? How's the 5G test affecting everything? Is there more you can tell us about what you're doing,
Sure.
that you can share?
Sure. As you know, Lake Nona was built on a foundation of 23,000 miles of fiber. And with that infrastructure at Lake Nona, it made it very easy to work with Verizon to put in a 5G network. And so now we're building out is a 17 square mile infrastructure of 5G that overlays over all the different property types: manufacturing, distribution, retail, office, residential, multifamily, hotels, and motorways. And then we're contiguous to the Orlando airport. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to create these incubators. We have a new one opening up in August, which will focus on sports, health, wellness. Another side of the incubator will focus on 5G, incubating, the next Uber. And so, we truly believe that it's really about providing that mobility and a robust technology to innovate. And so, we're this blank canvas. We're not the ones coming up with all these ideas, but we're a good, patient white canvas where then you could come in and create your own picture, right? So we've been able to, enhance these things, but we spend as much time focusing on the residential side as we do on the commercial side. But I think what we're good at is being able to scale these projects, work with, whether it's View or it's Nick or it's Sam, to scale these projects. We'll really help them monetize it. We understand the brokerage community and the occupier community. I come out of 27 years of working with occupiers for, CBRE, Cushman, Grubb and Ellis. But really what we can do is we can help them affect the influencers, right? So when I hear Amit talk about, CO2 censoring, right? That gets me excited because I understand exactly how we need to apply that. If we're sitting in a conference room at full capacity, which full capacity could just mean filling the chairs that exist in a conference room, and after 60 to 90 minutes, you're losing 30% of people's ability to productivity. Then casinos have been doing this for 30 years. I've lost a lot of money at a casino doing this, but so you start looking at how, it's all about sort of that performance enhancement. So now we can directly relate it back to when tenants are coming through and they're looking in a market for the best infrastructure or best space to occupy. I think what we can do is we can help influence those decisions. And I think, look, this project, Lake Nona, is our founder, Joe Lewis. It's really his legacy project, right? Changing the way we're building buildings and we're occupying space and materials we're using in neighborhoods. And, and it's really about sort of us pulling together, not just, the guests that you have here today, but it's pulling together hundreds of companies. And then how do these things integrate, right? The smart cities all around the United States. You can look at Panasonic, what they're doing with Pena Station, outside of Denver. You can look at what Bosch is doing with Lennar project in South San Francisco. You can look at, what's happening in San Jose. But when you sort of put these projects together, we've really kind of emerged as the first large scale project to see how these things integrate.
Right, so share with us so far what 5G has meant, if anything, in the complex. Is there any update you can give us, or any sense of where we are, that 5G is, oh my God, it's changed everything? Or, everything's a little bit faster in the complex when somebody wants to download a restaurant menu or whatever. Give us some feedback on that.
I think it's, the effects are, people are coming there to incubate, to create the next Uber, right? If you had to ask me what's the biggest, sort of reaction is, now we're able to open these incubators where people want to get in there to start working on it to create the next products. That's the biggest change. And so we have multiple sort of, co-working spaces that, everything will have the robust infrastructure. It's not so much someone saying, yeah, things are faster. It's, I can come, I can incubate, and I can try things. Look, if we go back to the foundation of Lake Nona, we go back to 2008 was when the first shovels went in the ground. Because of the robust infrastructure, we've got several million feet, 3 to 4 million feet of medical space, healthcare space. We've got the National Simulation Center, the most advanced VA in the system. We've got HCA building an adult teaching hospital. We got UCF Medical School. Why are they there? Is because we had robust technology. Then if you look at and then multiple other companies that have ended up at Lake Nona. But then if you look at the residential side, right, we're a new community. And you look at our the average household income in Orlando is $40,000 a year. Average household income in the United States is $57,000 a year. Average household income at Lake Nona is $175,000. Average age is 36. And before the coronavirus, we had about 30% of people were working from home. So that just proves out, if you build robust infrastructure, people are going to come there to innovate. And that's really what's happened at Lake Nona. Now, I don't want to scare people off and say, yeah, our average household income is $175,000. There's something for everyone, but it just goes back to, if you give people robust infrastructure, they're going to come. Look, I'm sitting working out of my house in Lake Tahoe. I have lousy internet service. And so it makes you realize that a place like Lake Nona, where everyone has 1 to 2 gigabytes, and we're Cisco's first, their legacy, 1G community, 1 gig community, it makes you realize that now with so many people working from home, you have to give them the right tools. Right. And so go back to the very beginning, I said, it validates the decisions we made years ago. Rich, you probably ask me at the end, but you usually ask me, what keeps you up at night? What keeps us up at night is it's such a large scale project. If we make a decision to go down the road with a technology that we have to change out that technology, that's what keeps us up at night, because it's such a large scale technology or project.
Well, if you think about it, in the 2001 .com, when the .com bubble burst, there was an enormous amount of dark fiber left in the ground and left for dead. And so, taking the view that I think was very enlightened, especially in 2008, Ken, that we needed a ton of fiber to make this all work, I think that's very prescient. And I think that was an important decision. Now, my question is, I wonder if the 5G piece of this, and I get your comment about creating the next Uber, because we didn't see Uber coming when we got 4G. 4G came along, and then Uber came along. We didn't say, hey, we can't do Uber until we have good, connectivity with 4G. But I can't point to one single real use case that anybody is doing with 5G yet that, people are out there now. I think it certainly could help Amit in what they're doing with View Glass. I think it could help both Nick and Sam in terms of getting to the cloud and back much more quickly. But at the end of the day, I'm really curious to see what it ultimately spawns, if nothing more than you're going to get the ability to download that restaurant menu.
Well, let's use an example. There's an example that I've seen Verizon use, and because we have such a heavy emphasis on health and wellness, you think about how we provide services in an emergency situation today, right? There's an accident, it's on I-4, we go out, we stabilize the patient, and then you retrieve the patient and you bring them back to the hospital. Under a 5G scenario, it's more likely that you go out, you can analyze the patient, send that data back to the hospital, and you can start treatment early so that you're saving 20 to 30 minutes as you're transporting the patient back to the hospital, right? That's a 5G benefit of having that robust 5G, right? So I think there's a lot of capabilities that'll start to emerge, and we don't know what they are, right? And we're hoping that, we're setting like Nona up to be this place that 5G can incubate these products. But we also see that if we had not made the investment in the fiber, then it wouldn't have been so beneficial for Verizon to come in and invest in Lake Nona. Now, I mentioned Verizon because we do work with others as well. We work with all the providers. So it's just that the specific project I'm talking about is a Verizon project, but we do work with other providers as well. We do own the antennas, the towers in Lake Nona. So we have relationships with all, and we're just excited to see, the advancement of, telecommunications going from 4G to 5G.
Gotcha. Well, listen,
Sorry, Rich, if I could, just on this
Last
point, I think one of the things we've seen a lot of uptake, we're in 65 million square feet of real estate now. And, two of the top 3 or 4 tech companies and all 10 are engaged with us in some way. 2 of them are kind of adopting us in a more serious way, is to Ken's point, if you create an asset or a building or a campus or a city with those capabilities, those high users who require a lot of bandwidth or are planning for the future are attracted to it in a different way. And it actually enables building to kind of grow into itself, if that makes sense. I mean, we were on 4 strands of fiber through the building as part of our backbone. And so that's not needed today. But in 5 years, when someone's building without a system like View or an infrastructure like View, the building that was built today actually is going to be more advanced from a bandwidth and technology perspective than that new building 5 years from today, right? So
I've got to cut it there, Amit, because I've got to jump to another panel. But it sounds like, in a nutshell, what you're saying is if you build it, they will come. Both of you sounded like you were saying that. So, we need to end this a little bit early because I have another one to jump to. But I want to thank you all for being here. This was a terrific panel. I think, getting an understanding that Proptech is more than just another piece of software, another piece of software, another piece of software. There's an ecosystem that exists here and that you guys have all tapped into. And I'm really happy that we had this mix of companies and people on our panel. Thank you all. Please, everyone who's listening and those of you on the panel, please visit our exhibitors and go into the chat rooms. Those people are waiting to talk with you now. People are manning those booths and they're anxious to talk with you. Thank you all for being here. And I appreciate you all joining us today at the Connected Virtual Tech event. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Everyone.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye now. Osama, we're clear.
are we still on? We're off, yeah?
I think we're good.
I think we're off now.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Very much.
Great chatting with you all.
Thank you.